Good morning, year eights. Welcome to your next lesson on astronomy. I'm really sorry about yesterday when I accidentally gave you the year 9 work to do, but hopefully you learned something new. And now you're ready for next year anyways. So, sorry about that. I felt very silly. Face palm. Anyways, yeah, so for today, I thought I'd just talk a little bit about the moon phases. I know I asked you guys to prepare for that for me. But I just wanted to make sure that you all know because this is really quite important. Um, I have not looked at the test, but I imagine that it will most probably come up in the test. It's something that they like to ask. Okay, so let's jump into the lesson. So just quickly, we know you need to know orbit versus rotation, and then you need to be able to explain the seasons of the year because of the orbit around the sun due to the fact that we are sitting at an angle, which makes the northern hemisphere closer to the sun certain times of the year, and the southern hemisphere at the same time further away. And the opposite is true when we have our summer in the southern hemisphere. We are closer to the sun in comparison to the northern hemisphere. That's very important. Okay, then you don't need to remember all of these numbers. This is purely just for interest sake, but you do need to know that they all rotate at their own time. Now you also need to know that my very excellent mom just serves us noodles, okay, or whichever mnemonic you want to use. But if in the test they ask you to write down the different names of the planets in order, you need to be able to have these 8 names in order. Okay, so my for Mercury, very for Venus, excellent for Earth, mom for Mars, just for Jupiter, serves for Saturn, us for Uranus, or Uranus, I don't know how to pronounce that properly. Every time I want to giggle. Anyways, and then noodles for Neptune. Okay, we talked about how far a light year is and how immensely far away things are out in space. Um, we said the sun, it takes light 8 minutes to get from the sun, but for instance, to our closest star, it's about 4.5 light years away. That means 4.5 times this 1 trillion kilometers, because a light year is how far light can travel in a year. Okay. Then we looked at the moon. We saw that the first crash thing on the moon, first man-made thing on the moon was crashed. Um, First successful one, the Americans. I'm just still amazed by the Americans putting in 1966. They put something onto the moon that was only 122 kilograms, and 3 years later, because I think this 1966 landing for Americans was like in November, so less than 3 years later, they landed on the moon with 2 gentlemen. Okay, looked at some pictures, and then I asked you to look at the size comparisons. I found this video really interesting because you can see when you have Proteus, one of the moons of, um, and where you could actually, I really enjoyed seeing, where is it now? Pluto, and the size of Pluto, because I grew up with Pluto as a planet, and I'm still quite sad that it's no longer a planet, but hey, there are things out there that's bigger than Pluto. Oh wait, Pluto was point 0.1 of the Earth, so it's really close to here. Yeah, there he is. So Pluto is 0.18 times the Earth. So almost 20%, so 18% of the size of the Earth. Okay, and then when you move on, you will see that Triton, one of the moons of Neptune, is bigger than that planet. It's also big, yeah, so you can see Europa, another moon is bigger. It's the moon of Jupiter. Our own moon, I like this. A moon called Moon. Where is our moon now? Sorry. There we go. So our own moon is bigger than Pluto. Okay. I love this one. Moon, the moon of Earth. Anyways, and you can see our own moon is 27% the size of the Earth. So, yeah, quite important, I believe. So, moving on. Wanted you to know that the moon obviously goes into phases and where those phases came from. I asked you specifically to look at videos on how it happens. Now, the main thing that you need to recognize is that when we look at the moon, the light is always coming from one point. Okay? The moon does not shine. The light comes from one point, and that point is the sun. Now, as the sun shines, depending on where we are in comparison to the moon, or in relation to the moon, that is how we will see the moon. Okay, so like in this case, if the moon is between us and the sun, like this gentleman, we cannot make out any detail there, and hence it will be a new moon for us. But if it's on the other side and we are between the moon and the sun, we will see a full moon, and then there's going to be variations in between. So there's our new moon. The sun is literally on the other side of the moon. So the back of the moon, as it's facing us, the back of the moon is currently being lit up by the sun. This side of the moon that we can see is in the shadow. And obviously that is full moon, which means the back of the moon is now in the shadow side, and this side we can clearly see. Okay, so looking at these different, now this was for May 2020, and today is the 12th, so you can see there that we are in a waning gibbous. So there's two words that you need to remember, or actually just about three words that you need to remember. So the first one is waxing. Waxing is to put on. Okay, we're putting on more visible. Now, in the southern hemisphere, we're lucky that when you start, and I want to refer you down here to the 25th, it's waxing, which means it's growing. Now, if you look at my picture, I am right-handed. And when I hold my hand and I look at it and in a C shape, it is the same shape as a waxing crescent. And because I'm right-handed, I'm usually using my right hand to build stuff up. Now, unfortunately, if you're left-handed, it doesn't really work, but it's the only one that I could come up with so far. So having a right-handed person waxing, wax on, just like the Karate Kid, wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off. Okay, so wax off in our case is waning. Okay, it sounds like a baby that's wailing, waning. Okay, taking away, taking away. Now look at my left hand here on the little picture, and then look on here on the 17th, and you will see that the C shape is the same. So it's my left hand, it's taking away. My right hand is putting it on. Waxing, waning, waxing, waning. Woohoo! I'm like a karate teacher. Anyways, so that is very, very, very important. So you need to know waxing and waning. Then you need to know gibbous, not gibbons, but gibbous, and crescent and quarter. Okay, so it's not that difficult. Let's move back to this picture here. Now, this is the northern hemisphere. Can you guys see that? Because it's building up from the left, and that's not what happens. So I need to fix that immediately. Align. Always rotate. Bang. Yeah, it doesn't really work, does it? Let's go back to our normal star chart here at the bottom. And this one will really help. Okay, so when we have new moon, all of the sunlight is coming from this side, always. New moon means the earth is here and the back of the moon is lit up, whereas the front of the moon is not. Now, I haven't talked about this before, but now that I think of it, the moon, we only ever see the same side of the moon. And the reason for that is that this side of the moon is the gravity of Earth is pulling it towards us. But on this side, it's much, it's more massive. It actually has a big mountain range and so forth. And that mountain range is so big that it then pulls towards the Earth more than what the other side does. So because gravity works like a magnet, this side is a stronger magnet than that side because of the massiveness, and consequently it got into a gravitational lock or a tidal lock. So we always see the same side, which means that when the moon goes around the Earth one time, which is a moonth, it actually rotates on its own axis one time. And we'll talk about that again in the next lesson. But that just shows you that we always see the same side of the moon, even if it's not lit. When it's like the new moon, it's still the same moon, the same surface. We do not see the dark side of the moon, okay? But the dark side of the moon also gets light. And like in new moon right here, you can see that the sunlight is shining on the dark side of the moon. So that's just the side that we cannot see. Alright, don't use the term dark side, because in a new moon, the dark side is facing us. Then we go. You need to remember, quarters, which is 4, and you need to remember the eighths. Okay? So, we go from new moon to first quarter to full, and then full to third quarter. It's not very difficult. First quarter, third quarter. So this is quarter 1. Oh, sorry, this is quarter 4. This is quarter 1, and it's half a moon. But actually, we call it the first quarter because it's a quarter of a way around the Earth now. Okay? Then at full moon, it is halfway around. So that's going to be second quarter, but we call it full moon. And then third quarter is when it's going dark again or waning, and it's now 3/4 of the way around the Earth, and then it goes back to new moon. Now then we divide those into 4 more sections. We have new moon, and over here we have the waxing crescent. Remember, wax on, waxing crescent. So when it's small and C-shaped, like a banana, then we call it a crescent. And then when it's bigger than half, we call it a gibbous. Gibbous simply means bigger than a half. Okay? So waxing crescent, I'm putting on light in my first quarter. Waxing gibbous, I'm still putting on light. Then I'm full moon. Now the light is starting to fade, so that we call it waning. Okay? And the waning gibbous is when I'm still over half. I'm not yet in my banana shape. Then we go to third quarter, which is kind of half moon, but it's half moon that is becoming smaller. And then we have waning. Remember my left hand, waning crescent. And back to new moon. Okay, so that's where I'll stop for today. You need to understand these and learn these names. Okay, so we go from new moon to waxing crescent, from waxing crescent to first quarter, from first quarter to waxing gibbous, and then full moon. And all of this happens because where the light comes from. Everything is still up there, you just can't see it. Then we go full moon, waning gibbous, third quarter, waning crescent. Okay guys, have a great day. We'll chat again soon. Bye.